Usually when we think about ancient historical texts, there's this expectation of extreme distance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like standing in a museum, right?
Yeah.
You look at the crumbling parchment behind the temperature-controlled glass, and you read the little placard about ancient empires and geopolitical collapse, and it just feels completely disconnected from your reality.
Right. It feels safely locked in the past.
Exactly. You read about Babylonians invading, and you think, well, that has absolutely nothing to do with my Tuesday morning commute.
I mean, we view ancient history as this sterile record of what happened to other people, right? In another time, under circumstances we couldn't possibly replicate today. It's intellectually interesting, sure, but entirely impersonal.
But today, we are basically taking a sledgehammer to that museum glass.
I love that, yes.
We're doing a deep dive into this deeply compelling analysis of Jeremiah chapter 4. And what is so fascinating about this particular exploration is how it blends those ancient warnings of literal geopolitical destruction with some incredibly raw, modern psychological insight.
It really does. It takes this terrifying historical crisis and reframes it as a profound blueprint for our own internal emotional survival.
Which is such a necessary shift in perspective for anyone listening. We aren't just looking at a dusty historical account here.
Right. We have three really distinct layers in this study guide.
Yeah, lay those out for us.
So first you have the raw scripture of Jeremiah 4. But then it stacks classical theological commentary on top of it. Heavyweights like Matthew Henry and John Gill.
Right.
And then the third layer is this intimate, modern devotional voice that brings in personal life applications. And through all these sources, it traces a very specific, almost universal human growth trajectory. It outlines the agonizing journey from emotional panic to true spiritual confidence.
I love that phrase so much. From emotional panic to spiritual confidence. I mean, that's something you desperately want when your own personal world feels completely chaotic.
Oh,
So let's unpack this. Before any literal or metaphorical armies show up to ruin the day, the prophet makes this fascinating demand. He tells the people they have to fix their internal landscape first. And the command is incredibly visceral. He tells them to circumcise your hearts and to break up your fallow ground.
Yeah, those are vivid, almost violent agricultural and physical metaphors.
Really violent.
And to really grasp the weight of them, it helps to look at how the classical thinkers interpreted this. So if you read Matthew Henry, he was an incredibly influential English minister and commentator from the late 1600s. He warns that an unhumbled heart is exactly like untilled fallow ground.
Just hard dirt.
Exactly. It is fundamentally full of thorns. His argument is that you cannot just slap an outward reformation onto your life. True change requires this aggressive inward transformation. Only a deeply cleaned, churned-up heart can actually receive anything good from the Word.
And then John Gill, who is an 18th century biblical scholar heavily referenced in these notes, he adds this brilliant layer of psychological stability to the mix.
It really does.
He notes that the command to deal with the heart is actually about removing spiritual corruption completely. Gill points out that without a genuine return to a grounded truth, a person's soul just wanders.
Right. They become unstable.
Exactly. They're constantly tossed around by false doctrines, bad advice, or, whatever the latest cultural trend happens to be.
And that wandering soul concept is incredibly relevant when you think about our modern condition, right? I mean, we are constantly drifting from one fix to another. The text insists that these abominations, which we can understand as false idols or flawed coping mechanisms we cling to, they must be removed entirely.
You can't just trim the weeds so the garden looks presentable to the neighbors.
Exactly. You have to pull them out by the root, or the ground remains utterly useless for bearing fruit.
Think about what breaking fallow ground actually means for us today. The devotional notes really zero in on this. It's about softening our hardened beliefs. I mean, I picture fallow ground as this psychological callus that we build up over years and years of getting hurt.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. You get injured in a relationship, or you experience a massive failure at work. You get scared, and you build this hard protective shell. It's a defense mechanism.
And then we try to plant new, healthy habits right on top of that hardened shell.
Yes. We use self-help panaceas, or what the ancient text calls worldly green trees, basically modern substitutes for real healing. We buy the expensive planner, we try the trendy 5-step morning routine to cure our existential dread.
Which never works, by the way.
It never works because the text is screaming at us. You can't plan anything new until you completely break that hardened shell open.
And what's fascinating here is that breaking that shell requires recognizing the behaviors we use to maintain it. There is a progression described in the notes from scattered seeking to stillness.
Scattered seeking.
Yeah, when we operate with that psychological callus, we engage in constant scattered seeking. We look for worldly solutions, self-medications, rationalizations, endless distractions, basically anything at all to avoid feeling the raw, vulnerable pain that lives underneath the callus.
We just want the quick fix so we don't have to sit with the discomfort. I mean, it's so much easier to doom scroll for 3 hours than to sit in silence and ask ourselves why we feel so incredibly empty.
That is the exact human instinct this text targets. The profound life application here is the command to forcibly remove those defenses. We are being told to face our emotional pain without our usual substitutes.
But it's terrifying.
Completely terrifying. It requires a level of weakness and total surrender that the human ego absolutely despises. And ultimately, the anchor command in this early phase of the crisis is remarkably simple, but agonizing to execute.
What is it?
Be still. It is a demand to embrace a divine solution over a self-made solution, to stop trying to fix your fallow ground with superficial tools and allow yourself to be deeply, painfully tilled.
But, knowing we have a psychological callus is one thing. Actually allowing it to be broken is another entirely. Because let's be honest, the heart has to be tilled repeatedly.
Oh, it's not a one-and-done event.
No. It's not like you have a good cry and suddenly you're enlightened. It is a grueling, constant process of choosing vulnerability over self-protection, which naturally leads to the big question.
Right.
What happens if we just don't? What if we refuse to break up that fallow ground? What if we just keep the callus?
Well, the text violently shifts gears to answer that. We go from this quiet, internal, agricultural preparation to the blaring, terrifying alarms of war.
The transition is intentionally jarring. It's the ancient equivalent of the air raid sirens going off.
The imagery of judgment becomes incredibly intense. You have a trumpet sounding the alarm, a standard being raised, a metaphorical lion from the north coming to destroy, and this bitter, sweeping whirlwind.
And Matthew Henry points out a really chilling dynamic about why this destruction arrives. He notes that the people of Judah had been lulled into a completely false sense of security.
Yeah, that outward reformation we talked about.
Right. They looked good on paper. They were saying all the right religious buzzwords. They attended the right gatherings. But there was absolutely no inward cleansing. They hadn't broken the fallow ground. So the bitterness of the whirlwind they are facing is simply the natural fruit of their own internal rot.
And John Gill is very clear about the mechanics of this too. He explains that the whirlwind isn't just a random run of bad luck or a tragic coincidence. It is a divine consequence.
Right.
The text mentions these watchers coming from a far country. In Gill's historical view, these watchers represent invading armies that are permitted to surround the city. And the reason they are permitted is encapsulated in one devastating phrase from the text.
Which is?
Thy way and thy doings have procured these things.
Oof. Basically, you brought this on yourself. That is a really tough pill to swallow.
It is the ultimate statement of extreme ownership. The affliction isn't an accident. Affliction is the instrument used to break the ground you refuse to break yourself.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we bring this into the modern day, the psychological application from the devotional notes of these terrifying symbols is fascinating. That lion from the north isn't just an ancient Babylonian king anymore.
Right.
In a modern spiritual context, that lion represents the very real destructive intent in our daily lives. The forces of self-sabotage, addiction, or sheer despair that threaten to tear our lives apart.
Yeah.
And those thorns in the unplowed ground, they are actually our modern limiting beliefs. They are our deep-seated fears, our immense pride, our relentless need for self-protection that literally chokes out any chance of genuine connection or growth.
That reframing completely changes how we view the command to sow not among thorns. It becomes a direct warning against the spiritual danger of running ahead of our own healing, of holding on to our false notions and our self-made schemes.
Oh.
If you try to plant a new life or a new relationship while still holding on to your limiting beliefs and unresolved trauma, those thorns will eventually choke out the new growth every single time.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on something here, though. There is a tension in these ideas that feels genuinely contradictory.
Let's hear it.
On one hand, the devotional notes tell us that in the midst of this terrifying whirlwind, the ultimate command is to stand still. We shouldn't run from emotional jeopardy or try to frantically make things happen with our own self-effort.
Right.
But in the exact same breath, the text commands us to wash the heart from vain thoughts and to actively prepare ourselves spiritually. So how do we reconcile that? How can we possibly stand still and do nothing while simultaneously engaging in all this intense internal washing and preparation?
That is such a good question. That's the core paradox of the entire text. And unpacking it is crucial. Because standing still does not mean passivity. It doesn't mean you just lie down and let the invading army roll over you.
Right.
Practically speaking, standing still means dropping your frantic, self-made schemes. Let's say you're facing a massive crisis at work, and your instinct is to manipulate the situation, maybe throw a colleague under the bus or engineer some complex web of damage control to save your ego.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Standing still means you stop. You refuse to pull those levers of manipulation. You let the chips fall. That is the external stillness.
So the washing of the heart is the internal work it takes to maintain that external stillness.
Precisely. You watch your heart internally by letting go of the vain, arrogant thoughts that tell you that you can save yourself through your own cleverness.
Right.
Surrender isn't just crying on the floor. It is the active, exhausting discipline of refusing to engage in your old toxic coping mechanisms when the pressure is on.
That makes the concept of surrender so much more actionable. And if we look at those watchers that John Gill identified as ancient invading armies, well, in the devotional notes, they take on a totally different, intensely personal role today.
Yeah, they do.
In our modern battles, those watchers aren't guys with spears. They are the mechanisms keeping guard over our souls. So they might be trusted friends telling us hard truths, or ministers, or the word, or just the nagging voice of conscience. They might even be that terrifying 2 a.m. anxiety that wakes you up in a cold sweat because, deep down, you are living out of alignment with your values. It feels like an attack, but it's actually an alarm.
They aren't there to destroy you. They are there to wake you up. When we stubbornly refuse to move ourselves, God uses trials to move us. The whirlwind comes to burn away the thorns. The trial is clearing away everything that resists him.
Which is painful, but necessary.
Extremely necessary. And that shifts our entire reaction from fear to readiness. Instead of panicking at the whirlwind, we retreat into the Word, into a foundation of spiritual truth as our actual protection.
But the chaos doesn't stop at the personal level, does it? As we move further into the narrative of Jeremiah 4, the scale of the text does something extraordinary. It zooms all the way out to encompass the entire cosmos, but simultaneously zooms all the way into the breaking heart of the prophet himself.
The imagery is absolutely haunting.
The text describes this visceral, physical anguish, a heart-pounding, absolute alarm at the sound of the trumpet. And then the vision expands into a state of total, unimaginable desolation. The earth is described as being without form and void. The heavens have no light. The mountains are trembling. It's literally the undoing of creation.
Yeah, it is a deliberate, terrifying echo of Genesis chapter 1, but playing in reverse.
Wow, reverse Genesis.
Exactly. Creation is collapsing back into chaos, and Matthew Henry observes that this represents a state of total desolation brought on because the people are, as the text explicitly says, wise to do evil, but ignorant of good.
That is a brutal description.
It is. When a culture or an individual becomes incredibly sophisticated at doing the wrong thing, but entirely forgets how to do the right thing, reality itself begins to unravel. When lesser judgments, those initial warning sirens, fail to wake a person up, total deconstruction follows.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do we take this cosmic unraveling and apply it to our own lives?
Well, the devotional notes really dig into personal testimonies here.
Right. We all go through these dark nights of the soul. Periods where it feels like our entire identity, our career, or a foundational relationship is just dissolving into the void. The modern insights suggest that this historical king, Nebuchadnezzar, who came and leveled Jerusalem, is a psychological archetype for the ultimate stress test.
Absolutely.
He represents the kind of spiritual audit we all eventually face, where every comfort and routine we rely on is stripped away. The text warns us about ungodly associations and demands a willingness to break our comfortable routines.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we find the deepest, most counterintuitive insight of all. Why would the universe, or God, permit this level of destruction? Why allow the earth to become formless and void?
Right, why not just fix it gently?
Because destroying what is fundamentally corrupted is actually an act of preserving what is good.
It's like extreme surgery. You have to cut out the tumor, even if it causes massive trauma to the body, in order to save the life.
Yes. The warnings, no matter how terrifying the trumpet sounds, are merciful. And we see this perfectly encapsulated in the final, agonizing imagery of the chapter. The text compares the suffering of the people to the travail of a woman.
Travail being labor
Right,
pains.
and travail is agonizing. It is an all-consuming, terrifying level of pain. But there is a critical, life-altering distinction to be made here.
What's the distinction?
Travail is fundamentally different from a death pang. A death pang is the end. The body is shutting down, the story is over. But travail is the necessary, unavoidable pain that precedes new life. It is the anguish of restoration.
Oh, wow.
The judgment, the whirlwind, the unraveling. It is all incredibly bitter because the human heart fiercely resists giving up its idols and its defense mechanisms. But that unraveling is not a death pang. It is the birth of something pure.
That reframes the hardest moments of our lives completely. The
Yeah.
exhaustion you feel, the sense that your life is being shaken to its absolute core, the feeling that you were losing everything that made you feel safe. It's not the end, it's the travail. And looking back at the journey we've taken through this deep dive today, we can clearly see the map it lays out for us. We started with the command to check our fallow ground, to stop applying superficial self-help to deep, festering wounds.
Right.
We move through the terrifying realization that if we don't surrender voluntarily, the whirlwind of affliction will do the work for us, forcibly burning away our limiting beliefs and our pride. And finally, we arrive at this cosmic picture of unraveling, realizing that the chaos isn't meant to destroy us. It is meant to give birth to genuine spiritual confidence.
It is the ultimate journey from a surface-level performative existence to deep, terrifying, and ultimately saving vulnerability. When the spiritual war is raging and the alarms are sounding, our only real defense is to stop fighting the process. We have to allow the watchers to wake us up so that we can find, as the text suggests, peace before the sword.
Peace before the sword. Finding that internal stillness, even when the external alarms of war are blaring all around you, that is the true reward of breaking up that psychological callus.
It really is. And as we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building entirely on that closing theme of desolation and travail.
Lay it on us.
The text describes the ultimate judgment as the earth becoming without form and void, a state of total unraveling chaos where everything you thought was stable has vanished into the dark. But it also insists that the anguish we feel in that exact moment is the travail that precedes restoration. Consider this. When your own life feels completely formless, void, and unraveled, what if that isn't the end of your story, but the exact, necessary, chaotic condition required for an entirely new creation to be born?
What a profound way to look at our own brokenness. Not as a museum exhibit of our past failures, but as the chaotic, churning raw material for a brand new beginning. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Stay curious, keep seeking out those aha moments, and we will catch you on the next one.